parents put me in the psychiatric ward of the hospital for like 30 days. Wow, I feel emotion coming up about that, but I loved it there. It was the first time I felt safe and seen and was able to sort of start talking about things. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave, but I had to. And my parents didn't want me back. So they put me in foster care from the hospital.
Mhm.
And that was probably the worst thing that could have happened to me because I had 3 foster sisters who were way worse than I was. Let me tell you a little bit about what led to becoming a coach. Just it's one thing, and then because it leads back to my childhood. I had a lot of hard things happen in my childhood, which we're gonna talk about. And I, as an adult, knew that I was different because of the things that happened when I was a kid. I knew that the traumas that I had been through had changed my brain. And I am a learner at heart, and so I became a life coach to figure out how to manage this broken brain from all this trauma that I had had. And then one day I was just reading, I don't even remember who said this, but I read this quote that said something like, "It's true that trauma changes your brain, but healing does too." And that was like a light bulb went on for me. And I'm like, I got to figure this out. I got to figure out the healing because I didn't choose the things that happened to me, and a lot of us don't choose the things that happen to us, but we do get to choose what happens next. And that just lit me up to figure out that healing path for me first because I wanted to figure it out. But then, you know how when you learn something, you just want to share it. So that's kind of what led to all that. So let me back up to kind of my childhood and what happened. When I was 5 years old, my parents took my baby brother, he was 3 at the time, to the hospital for surgery and left me with a babysitter. And she abused me while they were gone. And when they came back, I felt so ashamed. I thought that it was my fault. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept the secret. But at that time, I know now as a story coach and all the learning that I've done, I developed a story at that time that I am a bad little girl and I have to keep secrets. And then I kept secrets for the next 45 years and created situations that needed something. And so that, because I didn't tell anyone, I was hurting inside because that was too big for me. Like what happened was way bigger than my 5-year-old brain and body could handle. Started acting out because I was hurting. I either like disappeared and spent time in my room reading because I think in my mind I was like, I don't want to be in my life. I want to be in someone else's life. So to me, that was reading. But I love to read because then I could escape my life into someone else's. But also, I kind of started acting out, especially I grew up with a mom. I love my mom so much, but she grew up really, really poor. And so she wanted us to look right, act right, smell right, be right, so that we wouldn't get rejected. We dealt with so much rejection when she was a kid. And so I grew up believing that when I was smart and cute and clean and did the things right, that people loved me. And so I just developed these achiever patterns of proving and pushing and pleasing, all to try to be loved. When I was a teen, I kind of went way off the deep end. Like you know, when you're a teen, it's hard anyway.
No, and it is also hard when you've been sexually abused. I was sexually abused, and mine was I thought everybody saw it. That they see that I was sexually abused, although I hid it from everyone until my 20s. Sorry about that, but it's one way or the other, and you want the attention, and then you try to hide from the attention. But your reading is a big part. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That
yeah, I'm
is
sorry.
no, that's so powerful because it prompted me to kind of think about what happened next, is that I turned that same proving, pushing, pleasing to trying to be loved by men and doing whatever was required for that, right? Exact same pattern, I just put it in a different place, but it was still about, "Can someone please love me? Can someone please see me?" Right? And of course, the men saw me in whatever way they needed to see me, but nobody saw. And then, um I really, really acted out, like drugs, sex, cutting, lots and lots of things. Parents put me in the psychiatric ward of the hospital for like 30 days. Wow, I feel emotion coming up about that, but I loved it there. It was the first time I felt safe and seen and was able to sort of start talking about things. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave, but I had to. And my parents didn't want me back. So they put me in foster care from the hospital. And that was probably the worst thing that could have happened to me because I had 3 foster sisters who were way worse than I was. I was still this pretty little Mormon girl put in this foster care with 3 girls who had grown up in really, really hard situations with not a loving family. I had a loving family, like, I always want to, like, protect my mom in this situation because she did decide to put me in foster care, but it was just she didn't know what to do with it. Just like it was too big for me when I was 5, it was too big for her in that moment. And so when an expert says, "Well, you could do this," she's like, "Okay, I guess maybe that might be the solution," right? At that point, she was wanted anything that would help me, right? She didn't know how to help me. But I developed another story at that time, which was if your mom doesn't want you, who's ever going to want you, right? Your mom is supposed to love you, and your mom gave you away. And so I had foster sisters who were doing things I had never even heard of. And I went right along with them. And I got even worse, did worse things, did worse drugs. I got more and more into things. One of my foster sisters and I ended up running away from the foster home. And then I don't even remember how it all unfolded, but I ended up back at home. But then my mom and I still aren't getting along. It was a really hard situation. I was still doing a lot of the things that I was getting in trouble for. And we had a fight one day, and my mom was like, "Well, if you don't like it, you can leave. And if there's one thing I am, it's stubborn." So I was like, "Fine, I'll leave." I was 16, it was November in Utah. I was wearing a miniskirt and a sweater and these moccasin boots, which I loved in the '80s. And I slept in the park the first night, and very close to home, like literally 1 block from my house, because somehow being that close to home was a little bit of safety, right? I knew that park. I literally had played tennis in that park and played on the swings in that park, and something about that felt a tiny bit safe, but it also felt very, very unsafe and very cold. So one of my friends the next day had talked to her sister who was living with her boyfriend who was a drug dealer. So they said I could stay there. And so I did that because I knew I wasn't gonna sleep in the park again. Um, but at that drug house, lots and lots of bad things happened. Men came and went 3 times my age, groups of them taking me in other groups, like lots and lots of really, really hard things happened. And I actually have a book coming out soon. And I don't give lots of details, but I give little snippets of that. And my mom doesn't know any of that. And so I'm afraid the book's gonna break her heart because it's heartbreaking. Like, what happened to me there is heartbreaking.
I think it's really powerful to share something like that, knowing that it may hurt her, but having the strength to share that side of you because it is part of your story and what's made you you. I just wanted to say I really admire that. And
My solution that I came to, because I felt like I kinda need to have a conversation, but that feels so scary. I still might. I'm gonna maybe have a conversation with her, but what I did instead is I wrote a letter to her in the book, partly because saying, "Hey, mom, if you're reading this," and then I told her some things, but also to kind of create context for the reader about her, because I don't want it to be about bashing her, because she was literally doing the best she could too, and I can see that now. But it took me a long time to be able to see that and have compassion for her because I was so stuck in my own victim story.
was there a moment when you kind of realized that? I'm sure, I mean, over time it kind of changed, but was there a key moment or thing that happened where you were like, wow, I do understand that she was trying her best?
I think as I've healed and done, like become a coach and learn things about our mind body systems and how our patterns develop, it's so obvious why she was the way she was, why I was the way I was, why I am the way I am, right? And I think when we can see that, we have compassion for ourselves because I like to say your patterns are not who you are. Your patterns actually block who you are. And when you can see that, that was blocking my mom too. Like my mom is really kind and genuine and generous inside, but she has these protective patterns around her from all the things she went through, and we all do, right? Some of mine are push and prove and please and achieve and be the smartest and be the best. And that's exhausting, right? That's exhausting. So,
For sure.
yeah.
So, how did you get out of the drug house?
On New Year's Eve, they a lot of people were there. They were shooting up heroin and someone overdosed and died. And the next day, a lot of people went home, like for whatever reason. For some reason, I was alone. And I was like, I do not know what I am doing here. And I do not want to be here anymore. That was suddenly so dangerous in my mind. Like that was a breaking point that I'm like, yeah, this is not what I'm doing. And so I walked home and I didn't know if my parents would open the door. I didn't know what would happen. Um, but I remember the walk home. I don't remember a whole lot what happened after I got in the house, other than I left a little bit before Thanksgiving and I went home just after New Year's. I think I ended up going home on January 2nd. And they still had the Christmas tree up and still had presents for me up under the tree.
That's
So
beautiful. Now, at that time, you were saying there was drugs and everything. Were you addicted to any drugs that you'd have come off or anything?
I wasn't addicted. I definitely dabbled in a lot of things, but yeah, never. I mean, I was still a kid. You know what I mean? But yeah, I dabbled in a lot of things, but never really to the point of addiction. So yeah.
So,
Okay.
did you stay home at that point? Like, what was that transition?
What's interesting at that point is I've kind of had these periods in my life. I told you I'm an achiever, so I'm either like being really, really good or being really, really bad. And so I switched. I'm like, I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to go back to purge. I'm going to like try to fix my life. And so I met a return missionary who I was like, this is it. This is the path, right? I'm going to marry him. We're going to have kids. I'm going to be a good Mormon or whatever, and I'm going to like live the way that I want to live. And I was 17. He was 25. It was not a good situation. He was like this. I I feel bad talking about him, but just raised very differently. Patterns there too. Like the way that he was raised was very black and white in the church, very rigid, very domineering because he was older than me anyway. And so it just ended up being not this good situation for 18 years. For 18 years, I was like trying to make it work and trying. And through those 18 years, I went through those periods of being really good and being really bad and being just the same patterns going over and over. Finally, I left. I got sick enough of it or strong enough or something to be able to leave. And we got divorced after 18 years. So I had 6 kids at the time, 6 kids, single mom. I left with $500.
Wow.
Yeah. And met him a year later, my husband a year later.
He's sitting off the
He's
camera.
sitting off camera. Met my husband a year later. Um, and we have 10 kids together. We've blended our families and it's been really powerful. And my patterns continued because, first of all, I said I've grown 5 online businesses. That was part of the proving, right? I'm pushing and let me be the best and let me show my mom probably that I'm worth something. Somewhere in the middle of there, I got a job. I worked for the life coach school. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the life coach school, but I was an executive at the life coach school. And it was the catalyst to show me all my stories and all my patterns and all the proving and pushing and wanting to be the best. My boss would love me and working harder than they did and like caring more than anyone, carrying all the weight and doing 2 full-time jobs, you know, and I'm like, "What is this about? Like, what is at the end of all this pushing?" And I realized I literally I checked myself into the hospital to get out of that job. That was the only, like, survival strategy my brain could figure out was to, and that is a pattern too, I didn't talk about that, but throughout my life, I got sick to get out of situations when I couldn't use my voice to say, "Hey, I'm hurting." My body would get sick, and that would get me out of things. So, similar thing happened for that job. I got sick, checked myself into the hospital, but that put me on the path to healing and showed me, "You can't do it this way anymore." Like, and showed me all that literally was driven by fear and survival and chasing, right? All the stuff that I was just bringing from my childhood. And it's like I felt like I had to make life hard. And so if life wasn't hard, I would like create drama to make life hard. And it doesn't have to be hard, right? We don't have to live in that survival energy of always figuring out a problem. And that's what I thought I had to do because I was good at figuring out problems, you know?
Yeah. We live on survival when we've been abused. I've been in intense therapy for 30 years. I don't know, maybe more than that. And I was back when no men went to counseling, I was in counseling, but this last year when my son passed away, I found right before that, I found an amazing counselor that's done miracles for me. And yeah, we try to survive and we try to please everyone and we try to have people look at us as normal people when what happened to us is caused so much trauma. And I love that you help people now get out of these traumas and change their lives. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. You can't not, when something changes your life. I like to think that, honestly, I believe in God, and I think that God consecrates those hard things that happen to us and makes ripples for good from them, similar to what you guys are doing here, right, with your podcast. Hard thing happened, and you guys are creating really powerful ripples of healing with it. So it's powerful.
I did have a question a
Yeah.
little bit back where you said you were just trying to like prove yourself. I know you mentioned your mom. Was there anyone else, or were you trying to prove like to yourself, or was it just kind of like an overall feeling of this is what I need to do, this is what I should be doing?
Yeah. I think it was a lot my mom, but I'm really smart. And so it was always easy for me to be like the smart one. And so I think that became my safety zone. And so we're going to like move toward where we feel safe. And so I think that's what it was is if I can be the smart one in the room, then I'm safe. But if I can't be the smart one in the room, then I'm definitely not safe because I have a lot of secrets, you know? And so I just kept trying to go toward my safety zone, I think, which was kind of interesting because I was like so smart in elementary school. Then I went to seventh grade and like all the smart kids came from all the schools. It was a little bit of an identity wobble for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting for me. And yeah, some other things happened in junior high that I think I stopped caring. And I'm like, I'm not going to fight anymore. And so then I did the exact opposite. And that's what happens. We all, in our work, we teach that as human beings, we all have two patterns when we come up to a wall of resistance. And one is we fight harder and try to figure it out and be the one that's always working and solving and figuring it out. Or some people do the opposite and they're like, I'm out. I'm not going to figure it out. I'm going to escape. Sometimes that's into drugs or other things, right? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just leaving a situation. But my pattern is to fight and figure it out until I can't anymore, like at that job, and then I escape. And we all do that. We have one extreme that we normally do, and when we can't do it anymore, we do the other extreme. So let's take the opposite extreme. If you normally escape, eventually you like get so sick of yourself, you're like, I have got to fight to get out of this hole, right? And then just your human spirit fights to get out. It's powerful and for us, but it's powerful as a person to notice what is my normal pattern that I get tugged toward, because then you can stop it and you can be like, I'm not, that's survival, right? When I get tugged to that fight, figure it out, work harder, prove, do this, like you can feel it ramping up.
Yeah, and it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yeah. And so I say, notice when it starts building. Not when it's like clear up to here, but like notice when it starts building. And if we all like start figuring out what those things are, we take our power back because I don't wait until it's up to a level 10 before I notice, right? I notice at a level 2 and then I'm like, and what I actually tell myself is I'm like, I don't do it this way anymore. I literally say it out loud as a pattern interrupt to give myself a moment of space to redirect and do it the way that I be who I want it to be now, right? Not her, not the little girl who's afraid and still at the drug house, right? But who I actually am, which is a well resourced adult who has a lot of skills, a lot of tools, and a lot to give to the world, to be honest.
Yeah. I think what you're sharing is going to help thousands of people that see this. And I just want to thank you for being brave enough and your husband being brave enough for you guys to both be here to tell this story because there's so many people out there just like you that may be living on the streets now because they didn't go back home that one time and their parents had that Christmas tree waiting for them,
Yeah.
or they might be dead or whatever it is. And I just think it's amazing. And we'll talk about this later. I didn't think I was going to bring it up. But we're going to talk about when you married your second husband, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just think it's crazy. So when you became a life coach, was this soon after you quit your job there?
I became a coach while I worked there. So it was a life coaching company. And so I became a life coach while I worked there. And then after I left there, I had grown 4 businesses before that. So I've been growing online businesses for a long time. So we decided to do a coaching business together because my husband also is a coach. So we coach together. It's so much fun. And it's kind of morphed over time. We coach people on business, but through a story coaching lens because as we walk toward any goal in our life, the stories that we need to see are going to come up. So that's how we help them come up is by having you walk toward a business goal. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
That's amazing. Now, some of your things that you talked about in your questionnaire was like the difference between being human versus being. Can
yeah,
you explain that?
yeah. We like to. Well, you've probably heard the quote, "We are not human beings." Let me see if I can say it right. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So I like to think about that and I like to distinguish between those two parts, your human and your being. Okay. And your human is the part where all your stories and patterns and trying hard and worrying and problem solving and all of that lives, right? And that's because it's fueled by your human wiring, which is your mind, your nervous system, your body. I call that your equipment, right? It's what you were given when you came here to the earth. That's your human. But your being is the part, it's the spiritual part of you, you could say, but it's also the scientific part of you. It's the energy, right? We're electromagnetic beings. That's why when someone dies, they'll like try to shock them back into being. It's that part of them that they're trying to shock back into being because they might say, oh, he passed, but he's still laying. So what passed? It's that part, right? The being part. And so I like to help my clients distinguish between their human and their being. And when they get what I call snagged by a story, it's their human that gets snagged, right? Their fearful parts, worried parts, pattern parts. And so if you start noticing that, then you can, we call it get back to central station sooner and let real your real self drive, right? Because that's the part of you that's always going to exist. The part of Riley that still exists, right? Will always exist. And that's the part of us that has access and power to any answer that we need. We have access to all the information that we need, but it's our being that's more a 5D being that can access it, right? Our human can't. Our human worries and tries to solve problems and thinks that if I try really hard and do all the things right, eventually I'm going to be happily ever after, be able to live happily ever after, right? But our being knows we can be happy today. We don't have to wait for some destination in the future to be happy because who we really are is happiness and love. And if we operate from that space, our life is just easier. That space is fueled by faith. which is power, versus fueled by fear, which is not power, right? And so it's the difference between faith and fear. And I like to remind clients that they're both created in your imagination. The fear is the fearful path that you're afraid of going down, but so is the faithful path of courage and power and creation. I believe that we came here on earth to learn to use our creative power. And the very first place we learn to use it is in our own mind, body, and being. And in order to do that, we have to listen to what's moving through our mind, body, and being. And most of us don't. Like we're listening to all the chaos coming in out of the world, but not really what's going on inside of us. And when I like to say, put the key to your power back in your pocket, right? Don't give it to your wife. Don't give it to your kids. Don't give it to anyone. Put it in your pocket and lead your life from that seat of power. And from there, you're a creator and you can create anything. Like anything that you can imagine, you can create. The problem is we imagine the fear, right? And then we just live in this fearful world of recreating our stories and patterns. So our work, we teach you to live outside the story. That's inside the story. And that chaos of what I repeated until I was literally 48. I repeated patterns for 48 years until I knew another way. And now I live my life outside the story. And I'm not saying I never get snagged. I get snagged back into the story, right? But my power is not there ever, ever, ever. Neither is anyone else's. And when you can slow down and see that, you can just create anything you want.
Wow, that's incredible. Incredible. I think that's why I was married so many times, once again, is because I was always trying to be a father figure to women that needed a father figure. And then when I married my current wife, she didn't need me. She made her enough money. She could be just as well off without me as she was with me. And I think that has to do a lot with what you're talking about, is me figuring out that I didn't need to save the world. All I needed to do is save myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, powerful. And then when you're both living in your own seat of power, together you just create magic.
Yeah.
And you create ripples in the world, and it rather than being stuck inside your story, just your ripples rippling inside your story, like like a dog chasing its tail. You know what I'm saying? Use your life force, let it out, and like let it create magic in the world like you guys are. You're doing that, and it's like so inspiring. I love it.
Thank you.
So there was 5 steps in this. The human versus being was the first. The second, do you want to go into that?
I don't even remember what I told you. Tell me.
We had
Tell me what I
layers
told you.
of protective patterns.
Yeah, so we all have developed protective patterns. Our mind is from the age of 0 to 7 is like a little camcorder, recording every single thing that happens. Sounds, sights, smells, instances, facial expressions, what someone said, and interpreting it. The problem is we don't have a prefrontal cortex developed at that point. So it's interpreting it through a very immature brain. And because of that, it creates stories and patterns similar to how I said, I created the story, I'm a bad little girl and I have to keep secrets. That was the only way my mind body system could handle being abused at 5. I could not figure out anything else. And the reason sometimes when we're abused, it's a common thing for people to feel like it was their fault. And that's because it gives us a teeny tiny sense of control. Because if it's my fault, then maybe if it happens again, I'll somehow be able to control it. It's just like our mind body system, like trying to find calibration with the thing that happened that we literally could not have control even if we wanted to. So lots of things happen in our life like that hurt us. Some things are big, like me being sexually abused, but some things are little, but our mind makes them big. You know what I mean? Like I even heard a story about this little girl who just dropped her doll out of the stroller and she was crying, but her mom was busy. So her mom really didn't pay attention or even see her, but she developed a pattern in that moment that my needs don't matter. And it wasn't a big thing. She just dropped the doll out of the stroller. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's little things that create these patterns in our lives, and sometimes it's big things. But they were created at a time for protection, right? You can see how my mind body system kind of created that story to protect me in whatever way that it did. But it also created the pattern of, hey, I'm broken, I'm bad, so now I need to somehow fight for my worth. and prove that I'm worth loving, that I'm worth keeping, that I'm worth staying. So that developed the fighting pattern, improving and all of that. So just patterns lead to things. And so I guess my point there was that they're developed when we're a kid for protection, but then when we're an adult, they're still there and we don't need them anymore. So, like, I don't need to prove and push and please and go to my room and escape to my book, right? But I still do those things sometimes. And today they call me back. When I was a kid, it protected me maybe to go to my room and read my book. But if we're having an argument, my husband and I go to my room and read my book, that's not protecting me in that moment. It's literally it's protecting me in a weird childhood way, right? It's not really being an adult resourced, powerful being who wants to create my world and create connection with my husband. It's escaping my world. And so in the work that I do with clients, the whole goal of the work is to allow more of your life to move through you. Because when I need to escape my world, it's 'cause I can't allow what's happening in my life, right? So I try to escape that energy. And instead, we explain that you are the conduit. Your mind body system is the conduit through which your life happens. And it's up to you to listen to what is moving through you. And it's yours to own. And sometimes my clients hate when, like, they'll come and tell me their husband did something or whatever. And I'll be like, he didn't put that feeling there. He didn't put the feeling in your body. They want to blame their husband, right? They want to make it about him. But all it did was activate something old, something from childhood, something from whatever. And so that's what we do with clients is we dissolve that energetic activation so that it stops activating you, so that you have a more open conduit, so that you can live your life and allow more of what happens in life through you. You know what I mean? Instead what we do is we just try to hold life, right? We try to hold more and hold more and hold more and hold more until you're literally ready to explode. And so we don't want to do that either. That is also a survival pattern, right? And some people, like my husband, has this pattern that we call exhausted giver. He is just the one that solves, and he's the hero. He comes in with the cave, he takes care of the people, but that is a survival pattern from his own stuff from childhood. You know what I mean? And so it's really powerful for us to notice what is fueling this pattern, right? Like one of the things my clients are all building businesses, and often they're like, this is taking so long. And I'm like, what's the rush? Like, where are you rushing to? Because the rush is fueled by survival, right? And when you can slow down and take off those I like to say, take off the coats of protection, which are all the survival patterns, and then people can actually see you. And then your business is going to work because people are going to feel your message. Right now, they can't feel your message because you're so busy hiding it behind all the perfection and the trying harder and the learning more and the trying to be like everyone else. Stop it. Just like be you, right? Take off all of that protection and just show up and share what's on your heart to say. Because I believe that we all have stories. You guys believe that too. That's why you do this work. And my stories help you, and your stories help me. And the reason for that is because we all have the same equipment. And our stories are not who we are. They're about our equipment and how it runs, our mind, our body, our system. And so that's why our stories help each other, because we're all humans with human equipment, and so it's also powerful if you can see, like, when you get snagged by a story. Like, one of mine is sort of perfectionism. I call it excellence now. I've kind of downgraded from perfectionism. But I get snagged by that sometimes, but that isn't who I am. That actually blocks people from feeling me when I feel like it has to be perfect, right? They can feel me when I show up. Like, you can see I'm awkward sometimes and I stutter sometimes, and, like, it doesn't matter because when I can just open up and be, my life force comes out. And that's what connects with people. It's not saying the perfect words or doing it in the right order. It's just being, right? And we connect on a human level. And that's why stories are so powerful. They just really help us see who we are and how we're connected.
You're helping people build businesses but it's so useful in every situation. I mean, we've experienced it with this. If we have to do this right, and now, it's like, okay, we mess up, we keep going because this is what we're doing. It's never going to be perfect, but it could be anything. And I just think that that's such a powerful way to look at things of whatever moment you're in life to be able to kind of go at it with that.
Yeah, totally. It's really powerful work. And the reason is because you are the magnet. And when we shift you inside, Every area of your life shifts. Your relationship, your money-making ability, your confidence, everything, right? And what's so funny is all of us spend our lives trying to fix the outside things. And I'm like, "Stop. Just go inside. See what's actually going on in there, and then let yourself out and watch your world be created." It's really powerful. So it's so fun. You can see I love it.
I
Yeah,
love it.
that's amazing. Let's go on to the next one, which is the story formula.
Yeah. The story formula has 3 parts. It's S plus S plus S equals R, and that is state plus story plus strategy equals result. And because I'm a business coach, a lot of people just come to me and they're like, "Tell me what to do," which is the S, the third S. That's the strategy, right? I could give 10 people the exact same strategy. Some could do it, some couldn't. And it's the other 2 S's. That's the reason, your state and your story. So no matter what you're going after in your life, often we're looking for an outside answer and they want you to stop that. I say an outside or an inside problem will never be solved with an outside answer. So like if you're insecure, it's not an outside answer. If you're not confident, like all those things, it's inside problems, patterns, these subconscious things that are holding you back. And when you dissolve those, you just become the most powerful being that you can be. So
Wow, that's incredible. Uh, I'm going to break this up for a minute. Let's talk about your book. When you decided to write a book, how hard was it? Because I have a book coming out, and I started in 2009, and it's coming out this year. So I mean, it's has it always been in you that you thought I'm going to share my story and help people, or did you just all of a sudden say, "Here we go," and then you just wrote it really quick, and it just was so easy, and no editors sent you anything back? I'm kidding here because I know how editors work.
I have, because I was such a reader as a kid, like I've always wanted to write books. I did write one previous book, but it was a novel. It was a little bit about my ex-husband and like that whole story, a little bit. It was a little bit of my story in a novel. But this story, or not this story, this book, it's transformational nonfiction. There's really only one chapter in the book that's my story. And the reason I put my stories in there is to show them the pattern and show them how things develop over time. But I have had a lot of resistance when you said you have resistance. And I think the reason is because it feels, first of all, vulnerable to share hard things, right? It feels like you're cracking your heart open and saying, like, "Here, world, read my heart," right? A lot of it brokenness, maybe, in your heart. And what's the scariest to me are the people closest to me, my kids, my mom,
For sure.
even some clients. Like it's interesting. The closer they are to me, the more vulnerable that it feels. And so what's been interesting to me is I'm a good writer. So the writing part was really easy for me, but then I sent it into my publisher. They sent the edits back and I have been dragging my feet on the edits. I figured out the reason, and it's because the writing was easy, but the once it's public, that part feels terrifying. And the edits is the bridge between those.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, drag my feet on the edits. But
Yeah.
I finally did submit it. I just submitted it yesterday. So it's coming. I'm excited and scared too. I did have a book coach. One of the things that's hard is book writing like happened like overnight. And so by the time I went back through the edits, I'm like, I'm a different person and I teach differently and I explain these concepts in a little bit different way now. And my book coach was like, a book is kind of like a photograph. It's like who you were at the time that you wrote it. And if you can look at it that, and that helped a little bit.
I think it's neat that you have a book coming out because my whole life I always wanted to write a book, and now you have one coming out, and we'll get there. Yeah, a second one, yeah.
Yeah, it's called Untangled, and it's all about untangling your stories and then like stepping into your power. So not just, I don't want people to get stuck in healing. And so the work that I do with people is all about moving forward. And as you move forward, we're going to heal. We're going to see what you comes up that you need to heal. But I always say you don't need to go digging, right? You don't have to go digging in the past and like find all the hard stories. You just walk forward and you create your world, and things are going to come up that you need to see that you can work on and dissolve. And but it's a really forward moving creative process, not we're going to go and like be in miserable and heal and do all the hard stuff. It's not that. It's like actually very generative and life giving.
Yeah, and when your book comes out, we're going to bring you back on and we're going to talk about it because I think that will be so important for so many people.
Yeah.
Make sure your world tour list,
Yeah.
So
Totally.
Is that a good time then, after like what you're saying, that we could move on to the next point of why having a goal matters?
Yeah, totally. We do not have to go through all those points you have. It's just
No,
like,
it's
let's
just
talk about these
oh,
things.
it's good.
Yeah. The reason having a goal matters is, first of all, let me talk a little bit about resistance. I like to explain that resistance is like barbed wire, and it's always protecting something. And so when we bump into resistance, it's like barbed wire. So of course we want to lean out, right? We don't want to lean into the barbed wire. But if we can slow down and lean in and like see what that barbed wire, that resistance is protecting, there's always gold underneath. Like really powerful things for you to dissolve, first of all, so that then you can move forward. And so that's why I always want you to have a goal. Because if you have a goal, I say goals are to get. I mean, goals aren't to get, goals are to grow. Because as you're walking toward any goal, you're going to see what you need to see, right? You're going to walk towards something and you're going to be like, oh, I don't think I'm ready. I need to go learn more. No, you don't. Anytime you stop yourself when you're walking toward a goal, there's a story there. I call those moments of alchemy. And the reason is if you stop and see what's under that resistance, it's gold. You literally transmute your own stuck energy to powerful fuel for your life to create. That's why knowing that goals literally like bring your own evolution into being because they help you expand as you keep walking toward them. So knowing that, I would never not have a goal.
I love that. One of my favorite speeches, I don't know if you've heard it, is the Matthew McConaughey when he receives an Oscar and who's your hero. And his point is he's never going to achieve it necessarily, but it's always something to look forward to and keep moving forward. And goals
it's
are
so powerful.
awesome.
Yeah, life is an infinite game, right? Sometimes we look at things more in boxes of winning the football or the World Series or whatever, but our life is actually an infinite. And if we just keep playing, it's loving the playing is why we keep playing, right? Not because we're going to get somewhere and win, but because it's so joyful and delightful playing. So that's the fun. You get to that space when you're like, I have a lot of power. And you know what? If I have a lot of power, what if we could just create heaven here? Like, why do we have to wait for heaven to be in heaven? Right?
Yeah, for sure. Fear is probably the biggest thing for businesses
And people.
to start. And people, yes. Fear. How do we stop fear?
Yeah. Because even in our relationships, every relationship conflict we have is about fear, right? It's about fear that we're not going to be seen, that we're not being loved, that we're being rejected, that we're not being understood. It's always comes back to fear, which the opposite is love. So it's really just, we're all literally these little kids trying to desperately be loved, right? But we let fear get in our way. We're afraid of it. The thing that's powerful to know and remember about fear is that my clients come and they're like, "No, I feel so free." Good. That means your nervous system is working. You're literally at a growth edge. When you are at a growth edge, your nervous system should be feeling something, right? And so fear is not a stop sign. It's literally a signal that you're growing, that you're moving forward. It's one of those, it's a signal to stay at that moment of alchemy that I was telling you about. If you don't back away this time, what happens, right? And you just powerfully move forward and create your world. And so we get really excited about those edges of resistance because we know it means we're growing. I would say you never hit a wall unless you're moving forward. And so if you hit a wall, like take that as a good sign that you're creating your world. So fear is powerful and it's just a signal that you're on the right track. Doesn't mean stop ever, but we make it mean stop.
Amazing.
It really is incredible. There's so many things, and I love how just seeing how passionate you are talking about it is also incredible. And I could listen to you all day about it.
Speaking of, she's got a big online presence, and we will put the links down below. Every day I see her pop up on online stuff and give little hints and clues and makes everybody better. So it's awesome. Self-leadership and dissolving the stories that we keep us stuck is a big thing.
Yeah, I mean it's noticing. I like to say Notice when you get pulled off your seat of self leadership. We all have a strong, powerful self leader inside. It's that energetic being part that we talked about earlier, right? I don't, I was like, I bumped it, but I didn't say it. That is our self leader. And when you're not sitting on your self leadership is when you take the key to your power out of your pocket and you give it to someone else. You give it to the bank, or you give it to your mom, or you give it to your husband, or you give it to your whiny 2-year-old, whatever, right? But you notice when you get snagged. I like to say, if you think about a cyclone, it's calm. And that's the same with us. Our seat of self leadership is like the eye of the tornado. It's a calm, quiet power where we lead from our being, not from our human. Our human gets sucked out into the whirlwind and the chaos, and we think that is life, and it's not. It's chaos, right? But from your seat of self leadership, all that chaos is very, very different. And who you be, that's the most important point, is that who you be from that seat is different. You're very, very different when you're operating from faith and power and intention and creation than from problem solving and figuring it out and chaos and all your patterns. Very different world that you create based on where you're sitting.
Yeah. So now let's go into your second marriage. He's sitting next to us and he's sitting here smiling. It's all been roses, right? 100%.
Not completely, but partly because we blended families. We have 10
Yes.
we have 10 kids.
And that's how we have too. We
Yeah.
have 10 between us.
Yeah. And it's just hard when you blend families. And part of the reason is because all of the things we've been talking about. If you think about those 10 little kids, all had their own camcorder from 0 to 7, recording some things, some of it maybe not amazing things, right? And they all come in with their own survival patterns, strategies, wanting to be loved, wanting to be seen, wanting dad to, like all the chaos, right? So we had that too. But I think because, well, two things. We got to know each other. We met online, and he lived in California. I lived here. We didn't really think that we would get together, so we kind of became friends before we ever met in person. I told him all my secrets. Me, the secret keeper, I told him all my secrets before we met. And we just really got to know each other. So we already had kind of a established whatever before we turned it into a romantic relationship. So I think that helped. It also helped that we had both been married before and done it wrong,
Yeah.
and so we decided we're going to be intentional and we're going to create the life and marriage that we want. In a way, it sort of helped that we had kids because they all had other parents. And so we did have some freedom to connect and create some things just together with the two of us that a lot of people might not get to do if they have 10 kids. You know what I mean? There is a blessing a little bit sometimes having a blended family because there's other parents involved. But yeah, it hasn't been super easy. What is fun is we coach together now. And so we do all this work together now. And so both of us will see, like, we'll get snagged by a pattern or something. And then I'm like, oh, it happened. And then we'll like laugh because we both know the work enough that we can slow down and be like, whoa, you're not being who you are. You know what I mean? You got snagged by a fearful pattern, an angry pattern, or whatever. One of the things that we do often in relationships is when we feel like we're being dominated in any way, we'll puff up and get dominant, not be dominated. So that's just a common, like, one up, one down pattern that happens in relationships. But overall, our connection has been pretty good. The hardest thing I think that we've had is probably with kids, and not even, it hasn't been terrible, but I think what we had to do was change our story because I think that I came in thinking we're going to be this happy blended family, you know, and have Christmas together and do all the tradition, and it's not that. And so one of the things that we tell people is nothing's a problem until you make it a problem. It didn't have to be a problem that our kids didn't want to blend. We have to have 2 Christmases. It's not a problem, right? We just create a different family picture story than we thought it was going to be. But this is the one that we actually have. So we can either suffer and wish we had a different one, or we can just say, put the truth on the table and ask, now what? With this truth, with what is, with this variation of kids, now what? Who do we want to be as their parents? And then you figure it out, right? And you just take the next step forward. And instead, what so many people do is they sit on the opposite side of the table and they're like, I hate this and I wish it wasn't. And how do I solve it? Let me try to fix. And then let me complain. And I'm
Man,
like,
that sounds like me. When there's not a problem, and I try to make it one.
yeah. And that's not powerful. That's just like that's you creating chaos, right? And sometimes we create that. If we grew up with chaos, our mind body system tries to recreate chaos because our it likes what's familiar. That's what our mind body system goes after. Those familiar patterns that feel the same, right? And so if chaos feels familiar, your mind body system will try to create chaos. And that's where you have to be the leader, the self leadership we were talking about, and notice. Like I notice when I start manufacturing chaos, and I still do it sometimes. And I'm like, oh yeah, I don't do that anymore. I feel tempted to. And then when I feel tempted to do any pattern that I don't want to do anymore, that's a signal, right? I like to say it's like a smoke alarm. And if a smoke alarm's going off, you don't just ignore it. You go investigate and make sure there's not a fire. Same thing when the smoke alarm goes off in you. You don't push it down, stay be quiet. You don't do that. You investigate because I like to say those are like little parts of you who got hurt in the past. And they're saying, hey, don't forget me, right? Come back for me. Because I believe that true healing means that all the parts of you come with you. You reintegrate just as this whole powerful being who has to learn lots of lessons, a lot of gifts and strengths through the hard things. And then they become part of your power and part of your gifting to create ripples in the world. So,
Wow.
It's amazing. There really is so much power in just how you handle things. And when you say like that, you stop yourself and you're like, no, that in theory seems like such a simple thing to do. And I know that obviously it is not as simple as it sounds, but just the idea of like that doesn't sound impossible. There is a lot of work that has to go into that, and I think it's incredible just what you do and hearing it, but it's achievable and just learning from it is amazing.
totally. And it all starts with listening, inner listening to what's moving through you. I like to relate it to a train station. And when you're at Central Station, you feel calm and powerful and peaceful. You're in the engineer seat, big windshield looking forward, and you get to decide where you're driving into the life that you're creating. Sometimes we get snagged down the wrong track, the track of misalignment that isn't our path, or that was an old sport, or that whatever, right? And I want you to notice those moments that you get snagged off your track because the sooner you notice, the sooner you get back. And I like to say the farther you get from home, the more expensive it is to get back. And it is true in work and time and effort and energy and all of it. So that's why inner listening is so, so powerful because you notice sooner. We all get snagged off track because we're humans with human equipment. But if you really start being sovereign over your equipment, you're being sovereign over your human equipment, you notice when you get snagged off track and you get back sooner. And then you're back in that seat of impact, your seat of leadership, your seat of power. And you get to say, "Oh, what?" Right? And that's like the possibility. Anything you can imagine from that seat, you can create. That's how powerful of creators we are. So, yeah, it's fun.
That's awesome. So, in closing, if you could just spend a couple minutes and say, where can people go if they talk to you as a life coach, for a business or anything else? How many clients have you seen just turn their careers around because of what you do?
Yeah, what's so fun is, like I said before, when you change because you're the magnet, it ripples through your life. We've had people get married, get divorced, get a pilot's license, buy a sailboat, like big, big things that they didn't know that they could do because they were just holding themselves back. So it ripples through every area of your life, literally. People change and become who they really are. And then my favorite thing is to see the impact that they make. I want I help every client find what I call is their lighthouse message because I want you to say uniquely what you're here to say. Like I'm here to talk about stories. That is what I'm here to say. Even though my husband and I coach together, he talks about stories too, but his lighthouse message is everybody has an inner champion and he will help you find it. Right. So it's a little bit different lighthouse message. But when he speaks from his lighthouse message, people feel it. When I speak from my lighthouse message, people feel it. And so it's just really powerful to take off those coats of protection so people can feel your lighthouse message, because they can't when you're trying to do it right and be a perfect and all of that. Right? You just need to be. And that is the true gift, because just being is freedom, right? You just got to show up and like follow what lights you up and work when you feel like it and don't when you don't. And we don't recognize that we have so much power. I tell my clients, you are the lock and you are also the key, right? You are the one holding you back, and the key is literally in your pocket. It's literally in your pocket. So all it requires is a decision. That's the very first step to having anything. You have to decide to have it. And if you decide to have it, you can have it. You guys decided to have this podcast, and look at it. Now you have it. Right? So powerful. We are creators and we give all our power away. And I don't want people to keep doing that. So, yeah, we've helped lots and lots of clients grow their businesses, but also just shift their lives. We help a lot of people with relationships because this shifts you. And when it does, it changes the dance in your relationship, right? Sometimes husbands don't come along, sometimes they do. Like lots of different things happen. So we work with just people, but we work with people growing their businesses too. You can find me at our website is coachandkim.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Kimberly J, just the letter J coaching. So that's where I show up the most, is probably on Instagram. And all the stuff I've been talking about today, I talk about it every day. So lots of really powerful but simple concepts and frameworks you can actually take and change a world today, right? Not when you get there.
Yeah, and we will have those links
included in the video.
included
Yep.
in the video. Thank you, McKenna. I'm like, well, somewhere down there.
That,
Somewhere around. Right?
Yes. Thank you so much. This has been one of my favorite hours ever of my life. I mean, wow, what an incredible time. Thanks again.
I appreciate your time so much.
Yeah,
and
thank you for
so
inviting
happy
me. It
to
was
have you.
very fun.
And with that, as always, remember that the past doesn't determine the future, and it is never too late to rewrite your own chapters.
Amen.